You like when you
the same number of people.
I come over for
Where did it all go?
Gone.
Well, people are new.
Seriously, what did happen with that?
People you had a year ago.
It made its way around.
Well, good. I'm glad people are enjoying it.
But it does not mean you want more money to spend.
No.
I just wanted to get a picture of people.
Yeah, we're going to run an errand.
I should say,
Good for you.
Jackie.
I didn't need
She's
it.
gone way.
Jackie, are we ready to go?
Oh.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody out to our meeting today. Okay. We will excuse Councilman Henderson. He is running late. We hope everything is okay. We will go ahead and get started with the review of tonight's agenda. Are there,
Sherry's on the sugar rush.
are there any issues or concerns about tonight's agenda?
No.
Any future agenda items we'd like to discuss?
Well, let's do about tonight's agenda because we were having this question. So there is every possibility that we will have residents that want to speak on the old city hall. So can we talk about what direction we want to go if in fact that's the case?
Sure.
Thoughts?
I'm open to.
Because they're just on the report.
It's just on as a report, but there's been, a lot of passion on this, and so.
The one thing I'll say is that obviously it's just on for a report. It's not on for a decision, any type of action by us. So there's still going to be other opportunity if we wanted to notice it as such at a later time, and there might be better opportunity to let people know that that's going to happen. Just not there too.
Yeah, no, and I'm supportive of that. If you kind of make that statement up front, so it's not as if we're not wanting to listen. It's just the way this is agendized. It's not the appropriate time to listen.
And I would also encourage when you say something just to say, I have had, and I'm sure you've also had, several people reach out to me, and just encourage people to continue to do that, personally reach out so we understand, get a broader consensus of the people who really want to have a voice in this. We're always open to emails, phone calls, that kind of messaging so that we can understand that.
Okay, absolutely. Any other concerns or questions about tonight's agenda? Okay. And then any future agenda items we wanted to discuss now to put on for future agenda?
Hey, Brett, when is the appropriate time to put the garbage thing back on the agenda? Is it?
I'm gonna talk about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Sure.
Okay. All right, we will go ahead and move on to the discussion of the new planning commission appointments. So you all received the list, correct? Of the individuals. Were there any questions or concerns regarding the appointments that I had submitted?
No, not for me. I just know that Jared may or may not, I think he wanted to be part of at least that discussion. So I know what's up next on, but I think that to be fair for that discussion that we see if there's an opportunity to come back to that issue when Councilman Henderson is here.
I would be happy to bring that back up if he makes it before the general meeting, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment right now. I had an opportunity to sit in those final interviews as Sherry did with Mayor and Mike, and it's nice to have a difficult decision because you have a lot of good qualified people and a lot of willing people, and I think we definitely have that, which made it's a good problem to have. But ultimately those that were recommended, having been set as part of that interview process at the last stages, I'm supportive of the names that have been recommended tonight.
Yeah, me too. I was, like you, super impressed, and it's always a good problem to have to choose from really good people.
Mm-hmm.
Please. Comment on it. As long as I've been around, this is probably the most engaged the council's been from starting the process to the end. From resumes and action, 3 council members being involved in the interview process and the final selection. With that said, last year we went through, we had a lot of verbal policies and verbal ordinances and what staff to carry out. So when we start tweaking the ordinances coming up here shortly, we're gonna spell out exactly the process so that staff knows clearly what our ordinance is and we'll follow it by, our pipeline ordering, like 2 to 3 council members will be involved in the selection and interview process. Not, just if one's available. So I think that's a little bit of a flawed process when this appointment is definitely the final decisions on the council, so. But you'll see that coming to you. We got some work there to do, and that's why I told Councilman Henderson is we've kind of had a verbal policy, and everyone knows how I feel about verbal policies. It's a no policy, and we felt like that very, very well. And he actually said that as well, but he felt like back in December we said that we would have discussion before it actually folds. Want to share his comments? He's not here. Appreciate that.
And if he's able to show up, we're happy to hear his opinion and take that into consideration.
But in the meantime, I think we'll go ahead and move on, since we may be coming back to that. So we'll go on to item 3.1, discussion regarding the Danzy Water Company Emergency Water Purchase Agreement. Justin.
So this is, like you said, an emergency water purchase agreement between Herriman City and Danzy Water Company. The Danzy Water Company is a small water company that the Danzy family's been a part of for many years. These types of agreements are fairly common between different water purveyors, generally larger purveyors like Herriman City or a district. While these emergency agreements with smaller districts, they don't have multiple water sources. So that's essentially what this agreement is. It's an agreement that says in the event of emergency, say their well goes down, or they have some type of a chemical issue or a bacterial issue in their water system with their well or water source, we can then supply them with emergency water. And then this agreement just defines the terms there.
But that's obviously, and this would be with any case with emergency water, we can only provide if they are within our city. Yes?
So this would be somewhat of this is a surplus water agreement as well. It's not just an emergency agreement, but a surplus agreement. And so in those types of cases, then no, these properties are within our city boundaries currently, but we'd have to have a surplus water agreement. And this is somewhat of both. It says that we'll only give them water if we have it available.
Yeah.
So, but yes, if they're outside of our boundary, we wouldn't be able to do that because we have an ordinance that says we don't allow that.
Yeah, and I just was trying to reiterate that.
Yep. So this agreement just goes to say limit the terms. It regulates a flow that we'll give them. It regulates the daily total that we'll serve them. And then it's only good for 30 days and then if it goes past 30 days, that we just written notice. And then it also says that obviously if we don't have the water to supply them, we don't have to supply them. So it's basically just being a good neighbor type of thing. So.
What's the cost to the city on this one?
There's zero cost to the city. So in the agreement it says they have to install some infrastructure. We're having them install obviously a meter, those types of things, and then a backflow prevention assembly so that we don't have any cross connection between our system and theirs. And so the city will install this equipment and they'll pay us up front for that cost. So.
I think that they said there's like 11 homes that would be served by it. So, yeah, it's like makes sense. No different than anybody else in the city that's on a well. If there was a problem, we'd let them.
In fact, some of the history of us supply emergency water to High Country 1, High Country 2 actually serve High Country 2 through us. But with that said, when you think about emergency water if their wells run out, there was a lot of people in your area, Sherry, many, many years ago, and we actually redesigned our water line to go up and around through that area to supply people who run out of water in their wells.
Yeah.
And that was outside our area at that time. It had to be the surplus agreement at that point. But some people connected on right away because of their wells were going dry and they didn't want to spend the money to redrill them. So that's the reason why we ran it that way, by the way. It's actually a simpler path than that plan.
Stand out for
It is.
It's a good thing, bottom fire flow and everything else for that area. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to item 3.2, general plan amendment update. Michael.
So as you know in your packet, the planning commission did review and recommend approval of this proposal, with the exception of 3 areas. Bring these up again. Areas 3, 4, and 5, they recommended that they not be included in the proposed amendment. Area 3 is the neighborhood that we focused on quite a bit. We actually had another community meeting with that group. A summary of that community council meeting notes are in your packet. We were pretty good at moving the conversation from we just want open space, we don't want anything behind us, to understanding perhaps there are some zoning conditions that the council could consider in the future, given that that's property that we own and control. So some of those ideas are included in the materials we provided. Area 4, I think in general, there was a feeling that maybe it's just too large and might benefit from being considered in the larger general plan amendment that we're thinking of initiating later this year. And then number 5, again, they just were recommending that be delayed.
Why delay on number 5?
I think in the commission in general were concerned about having too much commercial zoning. We were recommending to the commission that I think this is kind of a shift of where we're trying to allocate commercial zoning in the city, and I think we fully intend to re-look at all of the zoning districts in the city to see what really makes sense long term. But I think that was probably the main concern that they had, is perhaps it's just too much to take on at this point in time, and I might benefit from a delaying and looking at it more comprehensively. But areas 3 was, of course, the main area that had community feedback on. Now, area 10, area outside of our boundary, we did receive a letter requesting that we not just do a total light industrial area up there, but the commission did recommend approval as proposed. That's something that you may still want to look at and consider whether or not this is the right direction in this amendment, but they did recommend it the way it's proposed. Now, having said that, we are interested, and the administration is interested in knowing, we could set this up for a future action, of course, that's the next step, but we didn't know if we should have another hearing before the council. Of course, it's not required by city code or state code that the council hold another hearing. But apparently in the past, that has been something the council has done often, or at least at times. So if we do want to do a hearing on this, that obviously will delay it a little bit, because we've got to make sure we get the right notices out in the paper and get that on the schedule correctly.
Mike, will you clarify for me on number 3?
Yes.
Because I had a little bit of confusion. What is it currently? What is currently zoned?
I believe it is a C2. Yeah, so the zoning is in
It's
place.
already
We're just bringing
commercial.
the general plan in line with the
Right.
current.
Because I think that was a confusion with some of the residents. They didn't realize it was already commercially zoned. They were upset,
Yeah.
thinking that we'd already went ahead with it. It was like, no, it was already zoned that.
Right, and we showed them,
That
we
zoning-
provided a slide of a timeline of
Okay.
what happened in that neighborhood. And again, I think they started to understand that issue.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, that zoning was completed prior to any construction being built in
Right.
any of the Miller Crossing development, is that correct?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
and we provided that information, but the same bullet list of timeline in your packet is what was shown to the
With that
neighborhood.
though, was with the general plan, that because it hasn't been updated, if somebody had looked at the general plan, the 2025 general plan, they would have saw the old
Got you.
zoning, correct?
Possible, right.
Not saying that that's
We
the end
adopted it for
all,
a
but
while, then the referendum sent it back to the old one. So we adopted it, changed to commercial, then the referendum undid it. So it's been commercial on the general plan for several months, and then it went back. So the council the residents seemed to accept that it would probably end up commercial, and they seem to be interested in more looking at zoning conditions and buffering that might,
Right.
but again, this is a decision of the council, the way you want to go.
So being that it's already zoned on just specifically number 3, I think it's appropriate to have the general plan match since we're doing an amendment. I also think though that we should have this conversation again when we start over here very soon to do the full update and allow that to be part of the conversation as we move forward and really set the vision for the city. But I also think that it's appropriate to make sure that our general plan reflects what we do actually have. We're not, this isn't a zoning change, this is a general plan change to update it to what we already have.
To match what what's currently happening.
So you're saying include it as we've seen it there. So, I mean, I think when we go through a general plan discussion, of course, we're looking at the entire city. What I don't want to do in this instance is approve it and then give any false expectation to residents that we're then going to relook at it with an expectation of changing it either.
I agree.
So, yeah, I
We
mean, I
own the property.
agree with your premise prior to that the general plan meet the zoning, and so I, like you, am, favorable with moving forward. I just don't want to, again, I just think you always are putting yourself behind the 8 ball when you give some expectation expressly or not that we might waffle or change our opinion. I think that's the whole idea with this, is trying to give some concrete idea of how our city's gonna develop, so we move in that direction.
Being that we own the property, I'm fine either way on that one, because we're the ones that would have to make decisions with what to do.
And did you feel comfortable in these meetings with the residents that they are becoming more and more comfortable with that? Or there's
Are they being
still,
commercial?
That was my impression.
because there can be conditions put on any kind of commercial use, and and understanding that I think is just so important.
We spent a bit of time talking about what also was happening in the neighborhood as far as open space, the Arches Park development that is being planned right now, and construction plans are being put together on that, and so we showed that project to them. So I think they began to realize that if the council were interested, that we could mitigate some of their concerns through these zoning conditions.
And then, Mike, to your second question, in terms of process, I go back to what I've said from the get-go, is I really think it's important that we establish a process and stick with it. I don't have any desire to deviate for any one project outside of a process that we've outlined. I think we don't do ourselves any favors when we try and educate on a process and then choose to deviate willy-nilly here and there. So I want to, which is, I mean, I think in large part, we put in the, community, I always call them community coordinators, I cannot get my mind off of that phrasing, but, we put in the community coordinators, we injected that as part of our approval process. We have that outlined. We talked about the messaging of a approved process. So from my perspective, I want to stick with the process that we feel like we've established that is frankly more thorough than most, if not all cities, and not deviate from that now or in the future. That's just my opinion.
And so that process would say, no, we won't have another public hearing. However, there's always ample opportunity for the public to reach out and talk. And before anything could possibly go in there has to be more public outreach. There's community meetings that have to be met, that they'll have an opportunity to speak. Lots of opportunity to come before us to say, no, help us with this. This is not the product that we thought would go in there, right?
Yeah, I'm not squashing public opinion in any way, shape, or form, or feedback at all. I'm just saying there has got to, at some point, be a process by which we follow for all these things, and we need to stick to it.
Right, so the process would be is that we would put it on for a future council agenda for action. And of course, you also have an opportunity to receive comment through just the open comment period of your agenda.
Good point. So if they wanted to come and talk that night, there still would be an opportunity for them to talk. Yeah, that's good.
I think the process that has been developed has been with ample opportunity of public comment in mind. It honestly, when we get to the point of action, is I think where the council needs to know that they have heard the residents loud and clear, and that there is a very clear direction of what way we wanna go before we get to that point to where we're actually trying to make a decision.
I agree.
So that's where the process has been developed to say you have multiple opportunities throughout the entire process to make that. We're asking you not to wait till the very end to make your voice heard,
Yeah,
so that we can stick to the defined process.
makes sense.
So again, what will happen is all 10 properties or areas will be presented to you. And then commission had recommended that 3 of the areas not be amended at this point in time, but you have the opportunity to accept that or modify their recommendation.
So on those, since we're here, what's your opinion, I'd like to hear the council's opinion on number 4 and number 5 as well, and what they think we should do.
I'll just say that I don't wanna find us
Missing the opportunity?
missing an opportunity, looking in the rearview mirror thinking, why didn't I wish I would've. To the point from the planning commission, I think we're all very well aware that we have challenges with our commercial areas and what is going to be sustainable in those, and we have to make sure that we are very thoughtful and methodical in where we put those and what we're trying to attract and what goes in there. And I think that we need to make sure that we at least allow ourselves the opportunity to go through that process and not potentially miss out on an area that could have been very valuable to the city.
I agree. I mean, I think there was a very distinct reason why we carved out 10 that we felt were somewhat non-controversial and yet were opportunities for the city, and so my opinion hasn't changed on those 10.
And it doesn't mean that there still can be conditions put on any of this kind of development, so it doesn't mean that everyone's gonna have a product that they hate. Everybody has an opportunity to have a voice in that.
Your thoughts?
I agree. I think that one of the things that we've suffered from in the past as a city is that we have not always had a clear focus on sticking to the direction we've previously given. Through our general plan, we get a lot of changes that come in and change the general plan to fit a particular development. And so, one of the things I want to see the city do in the future is to have a vision and stick with it. And if this, as the council's been our vision, and this is what we directed staff to do, this is, I think, what we should move forward with and stick to what the vision is that we have. And even if it's not necessarily what a particular group or individual or anyone feels. So right now, this isn't a permanent answer. This is just a temporary. Well, it's a guiding change. This is what we want to see here. We want to make it clear that this is what we're looking for. And so I'm supportive of that as well.
Will you tell me on number 4, the planning commission thought that maybe it was a little too big? Is that what you said? Was that based on feedback they received from the public or a consensus through the planning commission?
During the public hearing, there were a couple of individuals who spoke on 4, and they had requested that we would still consider some multifamily residential in that area. And so I think maybe that's where the commission was thinking that maybe it's just a little too large, the commercial area that we were
Size of that
proposing.
particular piece?
15 acres. Well, no,
25.
25.
So to do more of a mixed use type of thing, is that what they're thinking?
Yes.
Multi-family,
Yes.
mixed with commercial, that type of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. And so help me if I'm wrong, could we still do that? I mean, through zoning ordinance and things like that, or no, because on the general plan it's commercial? I mean, if it came presented before us and somebody came with an idea for that 25 acres, and there was some mixed use component, do we have to say no because on there it's
They would have to
commercial?
request amendment to general
To
plan.
the general plan?
So
Okay.
so one of those parcels, a 7-acre parcel to the west, came in about 2 years ago for some multifamily in there, and the council said they weren't interested in more multifamily. And so even the 15 acres has approached staff saying we would like to have some multifamily in there. And staff has indicated to them that the council wasn't any interested in multifamily in that area. So this will give staff clear direction if you're interested in multifamily in that area.
Okay.
So,
And that's talking density again, and we're not.
so we were trying to pay attention to you without coming and talking to you, but now we're listening to you.
Okay.
Sherry, in the next iteration of the staff report, I'll provide a table and uses that are allowed in the C2 zone, so you'll be able to see what type of uses we're looking at.
Great.
Is the direction of what you need clear?
Yes, we're going to schedule this for the next available city council meeting.
As we see it here in Moses.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay. All right, we will go ahead and move on to item 3.3, Danzig Master Development Agreement Update.
So, I just wanted to let you know, we had signed and went forward with Doug's agreement, and we had not seen any information coming back and forth on the Danzig agreement. And as you know, we were all in a big hurry to get it done. And so we were worried that maybe somebody would come and grandma or want to see a copy and the council would say what happened. So we wanted to just inform you what has happened. So John Brems and I met with Boyle and so last week to say what was going on, what's happening. They've told us that there's a couple exhibits they're still working on. One of them happens to be the legal descriptions of the new zones as they change the boundary of it, they're still working on, as well as the traffic study, maybe one other, but those are the things they're waiting on, and then they said they'd be getting back to us, so.
What was their expectation on when those would be completed?
It sounded like it was still a few more weeks out, so maybe next month sometime or early the next month. That's the impression I got. Probably a month and a half or so. So,
They
but
still seem anxious.
well,
to
we're
move
waiting for
forward?
them. They seem. We'll talk more about that, but yes-ish. So we're just waiting. We just didn't want you to hear from somebody else that we hadn't done anything. You heard it from us. We haven't done anything. So John's not doing anything. I'm not doing anything.
But not because you didn't want to do
Now
anything.
we're waiting. We're ready for the exhibits. We're ready for the documents, but they're not ready to have them signed and bring them to us. So I just want to make you aware. So if anybody asks, it's not.
The ball's not in your court.
Right, other things we're not doing, but they are in our court, but this one's not.
You live to work another day.
That's all I wanted to bring up for that right now. If you have any questions, let me know, but, everybody worked really hard on it, and I just didn't want you to think something else. Now you think whatever you want, actually.
We appreciate staff's continued follow-up.
That's all I really wanted to bring back to you.
Okay. All right, we'll go on to item 3.4, Parks and Recreation Update. Wendy.
Okay, Brett wants us to stand down here now, I think, right?
Yes,
Okay, so we're supposed to stand down here now.
so your voice carries right to it.
Can you try over there?
Go over here.
Not out
Wait,
there.
All right, so on Thursday we had our Hillside open house. We had 41 people sign in, but I would guess we probably had 60 in attendance. It was a really nice turnout, a lot of really good conversations. We had a few residents that brought forward some very valid concerns. But overall, I think people were very positive and optimistic about what we're pursuing and doing.
Was
So,
traffic one of those primary
Yes.
concerns? Yes.
especially for the people that live right there where the trailheads are proposed. But then the other side is people are concerned that they don't have a way to park to access the trails. So it's going to be a balancing act, just like with most things. But I think it went very well and was very well received. The survey is still open online until April 6th, so we're still taking that feedback in. PEC will take all of the information and put together a really pretty presentation and be here on April 25th to present in the work meeting what they've done so far, and that will include an economic study from Zions Bank, as well as the findings that they've come with so far.
Can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
That survey, is there like a link that I could share on the like of Facebook?
The Herriman Hills survey?
Yeah.
Is it on Herriman.org?
I'll send it to you. Will you send that just so I can also send it, so I'll just promote that?
And I think it'd be appropriate to mention that at the end of the general meeting, just that it's still available so people can go and take the survey.
So that's it on the hillside. Are there any other questions about that? There'll be a lot more coming to you. Wow, you guys went through some serious candy today.
It was sherry, it was sherry.
Sherry.
That was full a minute ago, I don't know.
I know, sherry. For the record,
There was
sherry.
one. There's one kiss left in there. That's about.
I've had a few phone calls from people that are interested in becoming vendors at Black Ridge Reservoir. Before I got here, so it must have been 4 years ago, I don't know. The council, excuse me, had discussed not allowing vendors at Black Ridge, just due to all of the parking and issues that we already have. This specific vendor is interested in doing an inflatable water park, similar to what you would see at Deer Creek or Jordanelle, which are obviously very much larger bodies of water. I've had conversations with him. He says he has solutions to all of the concerns that I have. I haven't heard those yet. But I just want to get some of the feedback from you all on this and allowing this at Black Ridge.
Well, I mean, the first issue that comes to my mind is there would have to be some sort of RFP process by which you would choose a vendor so that, you know, this gentleman who's interested in doing that certainly might not come out victorious. Secondly, just the simple concern of having what amounts to a commercial venture on public property seems to be a bad precedent.
We really avoid that in the past because we don't want to set that precedent. We've avoided having that. You know, it's the same thing with food trucks. We specifically have avoided allowing that on public property because we don't want the city necessarily involved in those private pursuits.
Although we do have food trucks that we have in this area. So I guess.
Safety liability and things like that. Well, during the RFP process, they would have to provide a certificate of insurance, but that's a John question really, as to how private vendors on city business or on city property, what our liability is.
There's liability to try to protect it.
Well, that is a good point. Brett brings up a good point, that we do have a similar relationship. So apart from what I just said, the rodeo and the enduro are exactly that, commercial ventures that the city supports, which is a good point. So the precedent has been set.
Will it
Withdraw that.
Will it dramatically impact the parking issues and all that kind of stuff
We
continually
He
have?
may know about these, they have it up at Jordanelle.
Yeah.
It is a huge hit. It's like $60 a person and it goes all day. It draws thousands.
Is this like a one-time event or is this like a
No,
2 week?
No,
they
he
just
wants
set them
to
up there.
All
set it
summer
up
long?
there for the summer.
Okay, so that would be a wonderful,
Somewhere else.
fun, yeah, it would be a wonderful plaything at a place that makes no sense to do it because we know that we already have traffic issues and parking issues, and I feel like we've finally gotten our arms around it to a degree where the neighborhood is calmed down and not so impacted. Putting what will amount to a destination recreation element there, as fun as it is, I think would just be I think it would cause an uproar.
Staff agrees.
Yes.
We've
Yeah,
been
we
there,
just wanted,
has good roads to it, not
Yeah.
house right around it.
Yeah, if we had the reservoir that we talked about, you know, to the east that was larger and it had an ingress and egress that didn't require going through private neighborhoods, then it would be perfect.
Yeah, I
This is
agree.
not the perfect location for that.
that's all I have. Any questions for me?
How did it go with the ice rink?
Great.
Ice ribbon. Great.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
great, yeah,
Awesome.
for sure was
We
good.
appreciate it.
We're
We
gonna
got-
do better next year.
I know I got lots and lots of very, very positive feedback about it. It was handled very well, and I personally want to express my appreciation to you and all the rest of our staff that helped make
Yeah,
that
they did a
happen.
great job.
They did an amazing job. So
And
Thank
to
you.
go along with that, I wanna make a comment, if I can, Mayor, with the ice ribbon and things we've built out there, it's actually given us some nice visual from our communications team now to start creating a marketing tool. Because we really want very key destination restaurants to go down this list, or retail places. So now, once they get that created, we can pull our laptop up and sit in their restaurant and say, look what we have for you. We have an audience coming to you. That was the whole basis of the investment.
In fact, one of the videos that we've done recently was shown at at the Board of Realtors. It was actually someone who assisted us with gathering footage trying to sell what you could do for them, and after showing it, everybody was like, we wanna move to Herriman, so. It seems to be turning out well. That was only a partial clip of the video, so. Shoots pretty well.
So good job. Thank you very much. All right, we are going to move on to 3.5 potential budget revenue discussion, continued from our previous meeting. Gordon.
Okay, I wanted to hit a couple things, probably just two items. One is, we discussed last week how the state passed a bill that allowed the county to raise a fifth quarter, and if they don't do it by 2020, then the cities can do it. And so, right now, if the county does it, we get this 0.1% of the quarter, and it's a very complicated, wonderful equation. I don't know what it actually means. I've talked to Alan a little bit. We're not sure if it's population distribution or point of sale, how it all works. But the real issue is, we talked about revenue. We want to know what the council thinks about encouraging the county and communicating this piece out. Should they be looking at this, and then 2 years from now, if they don't, what is the council's position? I don't know that we have to answer tonight, but we would like some fairly rapid input. We would like to know if this is revenue for us, and if we're talking to the county to do it, but it's something that I know the county council is going to be looking to each body for this support. So
The city revenue piece does not change depending on who brings it,
Yes,
whether
it
it
does.
be, does it?
yeah, we get more in 2 years if they don't.
Yeah, and we then are required to act. So is there, are we required by the bill to wait 2 years for the county to act or not? That's my first question. You're saying yes. And then secondarily, there is a greater revenue potential if in fact the city is the bearer of bad news versus the county being the bearer of bad. That's how it's structured.
Hard to say because the county gets extra at the front if they approve it. So it's hard to say that that's gonna give us more if we wait.
Okay, so it's a
Because
different.
they actually get a bigger percentage in the first 4 months if they approve
If
it,
they
and then
approve
we start getting ours.
And then it's going to be imposed by this, if I'm trying to remember from all the dealings, if neither the city nor the county impose it, does it still get imposed by the state?
So what happens is, in the year 22, the opportunity to raise the tax just goes away.
Okay,
It's just gone.
it's no longer a valid funding source. at that
So
2022?
in 2022, so 2020, the county has to enact it, and then the city has a 2-year, when all the cities in these different counties has a 2-year opportunity. Sherry was asking me, there was a similar bill 2 years ago or a year ago that included transportation and the transit element, and that was rejected in Salt Lake County. It was adopted, I think, in Davis County, a couple of the counties.
Yeah.
So this one's a little bit different, and so this is initially you don't get a vote on, I don't get a vote on. It's just the county council. Oh, I guess they can do it 2 ways. They can put it out for a vote for everybody, or they can just enact it. So I just wanted to kind of hear if.
Purpose of the money.
So there's a portion of it that will go to the county. There's a portion of it that will, the most portion goes to UTA, but has a new name. And then we would get a portion of it as well for
Which
roads.
is the reason that the previous
Fair.
tax increase didn't pass.
Because of UT.
Yeah, so
Now, is that if the county approves it too? I thought if the county approves it, it's split equally between the county and the cities, and then after they get their bid off the top, and then the transit district gets, 0.05.
right, so it splits it among those three. I'm not giving you the percentages because it's been explained to me 4 times. It was a sheet that Tammy handed out last week. It was very well done, but what we're looking at is a direction of, if we are, I guess what we're saying is, part of our discussion last week was revenue stuff. This is a revenue thing. We just need to decide. I don't know that we need to do it today, but I think over the next while, this is an issue for the county. Should it come up, should they do it to the voters? Do you want them to support that? And then if we have future plans, I'll plan for that money.
So I'm not I think I understand your initial question of, do we want to start a conversation with the county? is that?
That's my.
I'm less interested in that as our first step. I'm more interested in encapsulating the bits and pieces of this for our residents. I want the residents to understand what amounts to quite a complicated bill, where the money will go to, who the actors are in this, just as you've described in terms of the county and then the city, that there is potentially a tax increase on the horizon, and I wanna know how they feel about it. So that's my first step, is framing this so that the residents understand, first and foremost, there's a tax increase that was approved by the legislature, and then what the hurdles are to get that in place.
Okay, so it sounds like we get the money if Tammy handles this properly.
What's that?
We get no, that's.
I am not putting all of this on Tammy. If it's miscommunicated, then it's all Tammy's fault. No.
But the bill itself was what, 193 pages or something like that? It was a huge bill.
Okay, so that should be no problem to encapsulate that in an infographic. Let's create an infographic.
Well, and the rules are not written for it yet either. You know, it's a general framework, but the rules still have to be written.
Okay, so I think I have this information, is that we want to really see what our public thinks about this, so we're
It's out of our hands anyway for the first 2 years.
For the first 2 years.
But I think when, I remember the last time when this was going to the county council, they went to all the cities and said, you guys want it? And we don't wanna take the heat.
They want us to take some of the heat.
They want it, yeah.
So I think they wanna share it.
Well, that's the other reason I wanna communicate it. I mean, I think it's very important that that be known.
Right.
So that, I mean, let's understand, as I said before, who the actors are and who the decision makers are.
Yeah.
I don't want to play bad guy.
Right.
So that somebody else can be good guy.
Right.
Even though it's fun to play bad cop, I don't, not in this instance.
All right, there's obviously some benefit to the city. We're talking additional revenue. So there's obviously some benefit to the city when, anytime we have the opportunity to capture additional revenue.
Particularly for transportation.
Right.
Which, I
And
mean,
this
there's
is
a need for that.
specifically allocated for
transportation,
Nobody-
which we hear a lot about out here, so I definitely agree with Nicole that right now it's out of our hands. But we need to be able to educate the public of what the possibilities are out there coming forward, and depending on whether the county chooses to act or whether the city does down the road, what that truly means to them as residents and to us as a city to address some of the concerns that we continually hear from.
I think what I'm hearing is we need a 2-year communication piece, so when it's the city's turn to act, we decide whether we're going to or not at that time. But in the meantime,
have done
people
our
are educated
communicating
really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again.
And part of that's showing the deficiencies in transportation funding.
Yes.
I mean, there is a need, there's no doubt about, there's a need for
But
revenue,
communicating
but,
it out.
yes.
Yep.
All right, item number 2. Is there any more discussion about that? Okay. Item number 2 is Blake. And what I want to kind of intro that is we have been talking about this letter from EPA, Department of Environmental Quality. Is that who sends it to us? The DEQ?
Is this the audit?
DEQ.
Yeah. We got the audit today.
Oh. Yay, who's frowning?
Wait, let's see what it says before we.
Yeah, but
I got 30 days.
What's the damage, Blake?
30 days.
What's that?
30 days
So-
of preparing a plan.
So
What's the amount?
it didn't
What's
have the
the
amount.
days?
I think the amount comes after the 30 days.
So they're giving us 30
They
days.
give it, so what they're asking for from the city is they put 39 deficiencies the city has.
How did that compare to Salt Lake's?
I haven't seen their audit.
Alright.
We could go look, but it's what we expected. And so Blake has 30 days to provide a plan to the state to show them how we're gonna fix these 36 deficiencies. Now, it's easy to write up what you're gonna do. The hard part is saying how you're gonna fund it. That's the issue. So what, Blake, go ahead and talk a little bit about the things we do, and then I wanna talk about the funding option kind of
So
things.
the key things we need to do is make an ordinance.
And the ordinance has to have a stormwater program part of it, where we have enforcement, tickets,
You don't have that
inspection.
in place?
We don't have a stormwater ordinance.
The problem with this stormwater ordinance is we have to fund a position. This is going to be, so Riverton doesn't have the growth we have, and they have 2 inspectors doing this, and it takes them full time to keep up with what is required in what they want to do. And it's not just that, but they're testing the temperature of the water as it leaves the city. They have to check, the checking is a big part of it, and doing a bunch of stuff. We just didn't hire inspectors to do this. That's where we're at. We're just way behind on this.
Because
There's-
budget, why haven't we hired?
There's basically 2 parts of it. There's the field part of it, which is the operations. You have to clean every storm drain every year. It's all listed in the permit requirement that the state issues. And then there's,
It makes it sound simple, but that's literally rodding out every hydrant.
Sure.
we basically
Bring
have the
back
people in
cycle
place
out.
to do the work that we're doing now.
Such
This was
service
above and
treatments.
beyond, and we were just filling in with our people. And because there was no general fund dollars to pay for these extra people to do this. So we had engineers that were reviewing the SWIP plan, but we had to document it. We had to do monthly inspections on every house building permit, every multifamily permit, every construction site, which right now I think we've got 60 projects underway, and I don't know how many home building permits underway, probably 200, 300 home building permits. So that's about 350 inspections every month that we'd have to be doing. I've got 1 inspector and 1 contract inspector. And so they're doing the best they can, but we're deficient because we're not doing all of them.
By way of comparison, you just mentioned 350, how many, is Riverton doing over a similar time period?
I talked to the fire marshal today, and he mentioned, their building permits are like 1/10 of ours.
All right, so what about that funding portion?
Okay, so if we're, so here's the things you need to think about. One is a stormwater fee. The fee has some positives and negatives. The positives are that the rec center will pay us a ton of money, the library will pay us a ton of money, the schools will, say it again?
Their fair share,
Because
their fair share of,
Their fair share and not a dime more.
that's right.
Because
Not
of the
gouging
size of
anybody.
the
Well,
property
that's
or
where we're
what?
gonna get.
Because they have a large
Study.
asphalt
The
parking
study's
lot.
gonna tell us.
That
what
will
they are.
identify what their fair
Their fair
share
share.
is.
So in other cities, you see single-family homes range from, say, $3 to $9, and then you would see like a Smith's or something, and they would, or a church or a school, and they're in the range of like $900 to $4,000 a month. So it changes a lot, depend on if you do a tax or other kind of thing. Those guys don't pay anything, and
Well,
it's
and
all.
the equity's important. I mean, those big users are in fact impacting the
They're the most
stormwater.
stormwater,
Yeah,
because they put the most impervious surface.
so that would be a problem to not include them in the equation.
And so, as we showed you 2 weeks ago, I think, is that most of the cities have imposed it with a fee because it's more equitable to your residents. You take a lot of the burden off of them. Otherwise, you're putting all that surface onto the residents.
What cities are imposing a stormwater fee right now?
The only ones that haven't,
It's easier to say.
there's only,
Okay, who has not then?
I think it's Alta, Holiday,
Cottonwood Heights and us.
Cottonwood Heights, and there's 4 cities in this valley.
Oh, that's right, because we were talking about, we were the only high-growth community, you know, in terms of the one that stood out as very different from the other 3.
And those, some of those, one is just a brand new city, and I imagine they're going to be finding the need for it in a while, and they haven't had their audits either, so you can speed until Troy finds you, and then you get a ticket.
Oh, then you cry. We've already talked about this.
So we got our warning ticket now, so.
So the issue is, that's one
We
option
kick
too.
this can down the road as far as we can.
Yeah, we got our fix it.
How much does it cost to do the
So-
study?
So in the budget, when we were going through all the budget stuff, we put $115,000 in there. That should cover the study and the ordinance writing. And so we'll be in compliance with those things. And then the study will tell us what the fee would need to be if you choose
To
to.
cover the
impose
cost
a
of
fee.
the inspectors and different, so you have to do that fee to impose it on these businesses. The school district, initially they had a lot of difficulty, but every city's imposed it, so all the districts know, all the stores know, all the churches know. Initially there was a lot of consternation, but that's all gone away because it's all in Utah County, Davis County, Salt Lake, it's just part of it. So that's one thing to think about. The other way you could look at it is that, and there's probably a dozen ways to skin this cat, but I'll just show you a couple of examples. If, for example, you were to, let's say we find out through Tammy's study that everybody really loves parks and loves to pay more money for parks. If you went to like a $15 park fee, that would free up about a 1.2 million of our general fund budget that could then go to fund stormwater. So you can offset taking some other portion of our general fund and send it to secondary water by funding it, through something else if you want.
But that's making the assumption that we don't have other
Well,
needs that we could use
$10
that
park fee is
one
not
point
the
whatever
same as
million dollars on.
Well, and the other element to that is there's something to be said for dedicated funding,
Oh,
first
there
and
is, and
foremost.
it's
And then secondly, there's something to be said for residents understanding the true cost of living in a city. I don't wanna just move, what are the coconut shells? I don't wanna move coconut shells around. I wanna be very transparent with the fact that this is, we are clearly and almost embarrassingly deficient in this.
Right.
And so it's something that we've needed to deal with. The state has now shown us 36 reasons why, 36, 39 reasons why we have to deal with that. So let's communicate the requirement to do it, let's communicate the cost of it, and let's be very transparent about how we're funding it.
I agree with that.
So, do you have a comment?
Just the fact that, you take Riverton, for instance, they charge, I think, $7.50. Now, if they were only charging that on residents, that would be about $800,000. But by charging it to the businesses and churches and all, as they do, it's $1.2 million. So, if you take the option of doing a park fee, $10 a park fee isn't the same as $10 a storm drain fee in what we get.
And I feel like we're artificially elevating the park fund to free up money, which again, to me, is not transparent.
I agree with you. I think that if we're gonna do it, we need to be transparent. I think to me it's a transparency issue. We have to maintain it, we have to do it. That's where that money's going, and so that's what we're gonna show. Okay.
So what we need to do is Blake is going to bring you a draft plan on the 11th, and it's going to show the funding elements and show a proposed way of dealing with this, and so that by the time 30 days comes up, he has a plan that everybody feels wonderful about.
That gives him enough time.
Yeah, he has evenings and weekends, there's a holiday in there, so really it's not an issue.
One other thing though is that this money for the study is budgeted in next year.
Next year.
And it looks like we probably need it this year, so, if that's the direction, we probably need to budget.
Budget amendments. So yes, I think we absolutely need to.
I think we've clearly kicked this can down the road as far as we can, and we're out of road. And to the point that Nicole made, I absolutely agree that we need to demonstrate what the true cost of some of these services and things that we are required to do in a city are, and then collect money accordingly to cover those costs.
Well, and to me, I think that we need to stop being reactionary, and we need to be a little bit more, proactive on doing what we should be doing, and making it clear that this is what it takes to make these things happen, so that our residents know what they're getting. And if the fee is the appropriate way to do that, to spread that among all the users and not just our residents, I absolutely believe that that's the way we should go.
Especially when we don't have a choice. Okay, we've got to come up with the money someplace.
So I think those were the only two things I was thinking of, and I will talk to you more about other things later.
Okay, all right, we'll move on.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Did you find anything more out on the one
Oh,
we
yes.
discussed last week, or
The one that Clint had. He's gonna,
On which one?
the one where you're gonna talk to the counties about billing to get
We
the other
haven't
entities
talked
about?
to them yet, we're putting together a sheet to give them that will kinda outline what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we're moving
Gone
forward.
and met with them, yeah.
I was thinking of that spreadsheet you did for Clint. You
The
can do
other
that
one
now.
is we looked at the tax calculation that you talked about. And I just noticed as I was doing this, that in trying to put color to it, it just became white and black instead of black and white. But,
Oh, this study, yes.
This is interesting.
Oh, there's a green one.
Yeah.
okay, if you look at I went back and looked at the tax rates for the last, back to 2011, because if you go back further than that, it's skewed because that was before we were in Slovisa. The tax rate was considerably different. But our tax rate increased from 2011 to 2012 and has dropped every month or every year since then. So in order to really get the full benefit of holding the tax rate that we talked about, we should have done it in 2012. As we go forward, you see each year gets less and less that you can save by that, going down to. So, you know, if we had held the rate at 2012 rates, we would have had about 200,000 extra of property taxes each year. But at this point, it's getting less and less an option to do to make any sense of it.
So if we were to do it now, we're essentially not gonna get it.
Well, you look at the column over here, the difference in the taxes, every year it gets less and less as you go forward. The change in the tax rate based on the increase in property values is just getting smaller and smaller.
Where was your comment in 2012 is what I wanna know.
I didn't know where Herriman was in 2012.
And then we'd still, to hold those rates constant, we'd still be required to do a truth in taxation, so the process is still the same.
If we'd done a truth in taxation and held that rate in 2012, it would still be in effect. You wouldn't do it every year, but.
Because you're clearly stating this is our intent.
Yeah. So, but at this point, it's too late.
As one thing, go ahead.
No, we're on to city manager updates, please.
Okay.
Brett.
So also,
Thanks for
I
doing
have
that,
some
Alan.
good news about sales tax, or I could jump to something else if you're good.
We want some good news.
Well, again, our sales tax is up, 24.7, or 23.7% over this time last year and year to date. We're about 22% of that is local sales, so it's slightly higher, but mostly it's coming from the population distribution. 377,000, I believe it was, which is considerably higher than what we've been.
So what would be really great is to start seeing some sales tax from that anthem commercial.
It would.
Be great.
And, you know, we're seeing Amazon starting to hit us pretty good. I think Amazon come in about number 8 in our sales tax this month.
That's because they do
They sure have voluntary giving sales tax.
Yeah, they're
doing.
Point
Point of delivery or for
Yeah, which one is it? That's right.
Good question.
Point. What is it?
It's
Point
wording.
of delivery or point of order for Amazon collection?
The law says that if you deliver it, then it's the point of where it leaves your warehouse. But if you have someone else, a third party deliver it, which Amazon does, then it's my point of delivery.
Okay, so if you're buying for somebody in another state, the other state gets it. But
Yeah.
if you're buying and you're having it brought to your house, we get it, right?
Yes. Just the Amazon this month was 3 times as much as Cafe Rio. So, you know, we're seeing some growth there, but, you know, 24% represents almost $1 million for us over the course of a year.
That's a good number.
Okay.
So we've been asked to put the child abuse proclamation on our agenda to pass, and I want to bring it to your attention to see if that's something you want to do in the next council meeting. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jacqueline will get that put together. council member, and we had a third party, part of this, we, makes a request to reorganize our org chart, there you go. And I visited with each one, and I got the comments back, I've emailed it all to you. I'd like to put that on April 11th for approval, but also it's part of our organization and we show in our budget. So I feel after talking with each one of you and making your comments, changing it. So if you have anything that's you hate, if you just love it, that's great. We'll put it in part of the budget and approval on April 11th, then I will give that to staff on the 12th. The directors are all aware of the changes, that they had some input and some buy-in. It is, for the public, it is expense neutral. That's always important, right? So there's no increased cost, but it does put distributes some workload a little more evenly, and maybe it'll free up some of my time to be more effective in the roles I need to do. So we feel good about it. Appreciate your input, and so I'm moving forward with that if you're nods. Okay. Okay, back to we got a lot of problem coming up. I say that with the budget, and the budget process to accept it is interesting. Our first few meetings, we don't have quorums here, and we can do it electronically. So Utah Legacy Towns Conference, April 25th. We have the 4 of you still going out. Utah Legacy Towns. April 25th.
Yes.
No, I'll be out of
So
town.
you're out. So now we're down to 3.
I will be out of town.
But with that said, you'll be still out of town. Still creates the same problem. Jared would be the only one able to make it here. And we thought, can we do it electronically? Because we have a timeline to set the budget. The problem we have is accepting the budget and moving the budget process to having a hearing for the budget. There's really got to have someone here conducting the meeting here so the residents feel like they can voice their opinion and get it on the record. So we're in some problems where we shift the dates. That creates more meetings, but yet these are the published meetings we've already given out to the public. We have that conflict. We have the Washington trips of conflict. There'll be the mayor and Councilman Martin gone to Washington. So there'll be 3 of you here, so we can have the 3 of you here, hold it here, and the other 2 call in. I think that probably still work on that one. And there's a conflict on the ICS trip 2, which my understanding all of you are gone. Yeah, so see, we're going to go, wow. And Jacqueline and Alan was like, oh, we got to get it done. And,
look, the concern is, the primary concern, or the one that you stated anyway, is for the opportunity for the public to speak to those that represent them. To me, the only solution that makes any sense is that you move the 2 meetings where there's a big conflict to our off week. And so, again, and I get back to the other point you made up, or the other point you made. The other point you made, that we've already published those meetings, but again, I get back to the point of moving them is for the sole purpose of the residents, so that they feel like they have the ability to voice. So I would be supportive of moving those two off weeks so that we're trying to accomplish what you've stressed is the primary issue.
So I'm thinking April 25th, we do it. So we have a meeting April 11th, we'll accept the budget and amend this current year's budget.
Okay, now,
So, go ahead.
the 11th is when we give them the original draft of it.
Right.
They don't accept it till May.
May.
Sorry, my word.
Okay.
You receive it, you don't
On the
accept it.
11th.
Thanks, Alan. Always those words, you gotta make sure you receive the budget.
Use your words.
April 11th, we receive it. So then, can we not have a meeting on the 18th?
That's what we'll have to do.
If you feel like you can digest the budget enough in 7 days, ask questions, because that's the question meeting.
Jerry can digest it 5 times in that.
And the intent on
That,
if we have another meeting on the 18th, what is the intent, or what do we need to do
that
with the
meeting
budget?
is questions, it's to
Questions.
answer your question.
Okay.
Okay, if we don't take any action till May 9th.
So it would just be a work meeting on that night? Or would
No.
it be?
No, cause we want,
We still have a council meeting, if we drop the 25th meeting.
Oh, we're dropping the 25th. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
And
yeah,
the ninth-
perfect.
so many of us are out of town, so
Then
the
the ninth.
18th.
It's again a time that you can ask questions, but that's the day that you actually accept the budget. That's when it becomes.
That's adopting the tentative, right?
You're approving the budget, but not adopting it yet. You approve it, that's when it becomes a public document, that's when it goes to the public.
9th is me and you.
Now, the meeting on the 23rd
So
of
we
May,
can keep the 9th.
the second meeting in May,
We'll just do it.
is when it's supposed to be the public hearing.
Wait, which day?
Oh, I show.
23rd of May.
23rd, the one that.
That's when everything,
No, that's when we're gonna watch
ICSC.
So we'd have to move the
That to the
public hearing.
16th, or,
Okay.
when does it have to be done?
Has to be approved before the 20th of June, and our last meeting before that, I think, is the 11th.
So, the 20th of June, so you could almost go.
We have to do June 11th.
Yeah, you can have the public hearing and the adoption the same night if you would choose to do that.
We've tried not to do that, though.
Yeah.
By principle. So, given that we have till June 30th,
20th.
I'm sorry, 20th.
But we could do the 13th
We could
of
go-
June and the 20th of June.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, so rather than move up a week, go back a week. So rather than, what's the dates of the 23rd, so rather than, there we go, so rather than go the 16th, for instance, and move up a week, we go to the 30th.
We've got five Wednesdays that month.
Yeah.
I am out of town on the 30th.
I'm out of town with, the mosquito abatement on the
Well,
16th.
I'm sure a lot of you are gone to May 30th, it's kind of around the Memorial Weekend.
Alan's not even allowed to go out of town, that's just.
He
So
knows
who
that.
approved that?
Yeah.
That's not even an option. Okay, so the 30th is out,
My
probably ought to
wife
have our
approved it.
finance director for the budget.
Your wife.
So what are we doing on the 16th then?
Well, I was just thinking that rather than go up a week, because we have till the 20th, we could, like we did previously, we could go back a week. So from the 23rd to the 30th. Could we not go to the 6th?
6th is when is 6th of June?
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
public hearing,
And then approval on the 13th.
yes.
Okay, you would, 6th of June, counting back, we'd have to approve it no later than the 26th of May.
The what?
26th, we gotta have 10 days of advertising before the public hearing.
No, 7. So the 23rd is the day that we would have to approve it for the public hearing, is that right?
Is the 23rd when we're
We're at,
That's
ICSC?
when we're gone.
Is that the one you moved to the
16th?
No.
No, well, we didn't actually move, we were moving it back instead of up.
But if you move it forward to the 6th, you got 7 days, that brings June 13th.
It's whether, and then you have to have the public hearing.
You have to have 7 days before the public.
Public hearing would be the 13th.
No, if we have the meeting the 6th, how long does it take you to get it published?
Can we use the months?
So that gives you just 7 days from
Yeah.
that.
And it probably
You
takes,
have to have it's 7 days prior to the public hearing, but it does take some time to actually get the notice in the paper.
would be 9 to 10 days.
So we couldn't use the 20th of June to approve it that day. Is that what?
Does that make you
Yeah,
nervous?
you could approve it on the 20th.
And then we could have the public hearing on the 13th, and we could notice it on
But they'd have to have.
the 6th.
No, the 6th to the 13th won't work. She needs 10 days from when we approve it to when we go to the public hearing. So 1 week won't
If they
work.
don't approve the budget by June 20th, we revert back to last year's budget.
Yeah, we don't want that.
But you can always,
Can we contact ICSC and tell them we have a conflict?
through the entire
entire
on 37,000 people.
What was the
What
30th? What was the 30th? What was the problem with the 30th? Oh, Alan, see? Honestly.
I planned the 30th after I gave you the calendar.
Oh, yeah. You should have known better. Okay.
I can call in from Hawaii.
It's good for you. Oh, not Hawaii. We could all go to Hawaii though. I feel like we could do that.
I feel like I could get a lot of work done there.
I don't know, I get distracted by all that.
Alright, well I did my best with the calendar, that didn't work.
I still have no idea what day we're actually talking about, actually having meetings now, so what did we decide?
April 18th.
Okay, hold on.
If we did the questions on April 18th,
Yes.
Okay, April 18th, okay.
So wait, you're gonna give it
We're
to
gonna
us on
drop
the
20
11th, and then
Yep.
by the 18th, we have to have our questions, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so question, okay.
April 11th, so we have to just.
and then we'll need another meeting to approve it, and you can still ask questions that night as well.
And what day are we planning on that one?
Would that be May 9th?
Yeah, that could be May 9th.
May 9th, right?
Yeah, May
Yeah, 'cause
9th
that's
is a
the
good
one
day.
And that's the one
You
that
guys
we
can
will
just
call
call
in
in.
from Washington DC.
Yeah,
That
we
one's
can
fine.
do that.
Then that's for temporary approval, right?
And yeah, that's when you approve it, and then that's when
That's when we approve it to
We need
release it
10
to the
days.
public,
we
right?
release it to the public at that point. For that, it's kind of a working document, you don't want the public commenting on things you haven't decided on yet, you know, so.
So public hearing on the the 23rd, that was the problem, ICSC. Public hearing on the 30th?
Alan's gone.
Oh, I keep going back to that, why do I not remember that?
And we can have it on the, can we have it on the 6th, and then,
Yeah, can we do it on 6th?
but then you have to have 10 days after.
10 days.
That's still fine though,
That
right?
it pushes to the 20th
The
of June.
6th and then the 20th.
Okay, so June 6th for the public hearing with approval on the 20th.
Right down the wire.
Right down to the wire. Does that scare people?
Loves it.
I just saw the color leave
I
most of
know,
their
she was
faces
looking
when we
scared.
said that.
You know, as long as we're all here, we should be okay.
Live on the edge.
So you want the public hearing on June 6th,
With the approval
And
on the
then-
20th.
the adoption on
The 20th.
June.
We still have meeting on the 13th?
No.
So we're changing it off on the 13th.
Oh, it'd never be on the, oh, you're right.
Yeah, we would bump everything up that month.
So that month, we would have the 6th and the 20th, instead of the 13th and the 27th.
I'm good with that.
Can we not do the, oh, never mind.
Cause we need 10 days.
The 30th, because I'm.
More caffeine, Jackie.
I'm gonna need more caffeine.
We will also have to adopt our tax rate on the 20th.
Yeah, that won't be a busy meeting at all.
Seems that that would be the only likely timing to make it work with all the other activities that the council's engaged in.
On behalf of the city.
And you need to enjoy your vacation and we want you there.
Well, we want all staff to be able to enjoy that weekend as well, because it takes away from all of them.
So, that was a good piece, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So now, because we have actually made reservations, and in Washington, we actually booked flights, that's done, which we don't get money back, so that's committed. So now we'll make the registrations for each of these seen towns. That's a bigger commitment, cancel the one reservation, that's what I'm hearing. So we're three going down to.
You don't have to pay for mine. Well, my registration, you don't have to pay for my registration.
Okay, good.
Well, yeah, and
My apologies if I didn't communicate clearly that I would.
You did, I just followed back up, you did email.
Yeah, that I'd be out of town. I'll be in Indianapolis.
I just wanted to hear again, because it keeps going down, I just want to make sure we're clear.
So register for the ICSC, is that what you're asking?
No, utility scene council, okay?
So utility students have.
You're going.
I'm going, but I have a place to
She
stay.
will be there, she's not going, she's gonna be there.
So you're speaking of that.
So I
will
have
be
a
going.
place to stay, so don't make me a
It's all, I already have it reserved, and you have to do that,
she's saying she has a place to stay, so doesn't need a hotel.
I don't need a hotel.
cancel that.
Yeah.
I do, don't cancel one for me.
or do and make it interesting.
Anybody else wanna sleep somewhere else?
That's what I'm saying, is don't cancel anything.
My Aunt Laura's bed is way simpler than
Your Aunt Lori, does she do breakfast?
She does
I'm
do
gonna stay with
breakfast,
Aunt Lori.
dinner.
Oh, there you go.
It's definitely.
Everybody at Aunt Lori's.
That sounds like a plan.
Buffet
Thank you,
at Aunt
Sherry.
Lori's.
Okay. The thing is, back, remember I was talking about this in January, we actually were behind to get a room to stay and go to the conference. They book out in December, November, so next year will be a little more. No elections next year, I know who's gonna be in.
Thank goodness.
Okay. Washington ship trips done, ICSC, we have all 5 going down. That's still all in.
I just think
I'll
it's
ask
so
Jerry,
important.
because I worry about that, because that's big expense.
And dates on that are May
23rd.
23rd through 28th?
No, 23rd to the,
I have it until the 23rd.
Yeah, it's
Twenty-six.
not
only
the
3
28th,
days.
No, it's-
yeah. Not that long.
I know that Heather's already booked.
Isn't it
a
The 20th
reservation.
through the 23rd.
20th through the 23rd, isn't it?
That's what I'm sure.
23rd.
Oh, 20th through the 23rd, cause that
That's the
Sunday.
23rd.
You're right, I put the 23rd down because that's
Actually
county council,
starts
that's all I was
Sunday.
worried about.
Okay.
Monday morning.
So,
So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday,
2 weeks
Wednesday,
early.
right?
Yeah, we should be back Wednesday.
May 9th.
May 7th.
It's actually also 11th.
Oh, it's the
May
7th.
7th
It's
through
the
11th.
7th through the
You'll get back on the
Like your
9th.
Washington.
year. Yeah, it's the 7th through the, I'm back on the 11th.
The 9th is
Wednesday.
No,
Really quick.
Wednesday is a Thursday, it's Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
That was coming.
It is Thursday. I don't know what calendar.
That's you.
What month
Monday,
are you
10th
in?
is Thursday.
The 7th or the 10th?
That's what I said.
That's
Is anybody confused yet? I am thoroughly. Okay.
Okay.
What's on second?
Let's not talk about calendars.
Okay.
What else you got? Doesn't involve a calendar.
Mayor got an email and it says legislators and elected officials for Black Hawk apply for Camp Williams. Did you guys get that email?
No.
Okay, so because, okay. What's the date on that again?
It was April.
It's a 9 to 1 o'clock thing. There's a presentation in the camp, and then there's
Is
the fly, and there's
May
lunch with
2nd.
the general
May 2nd.
and the officers.
What day is that?
May 2nd.
Another
So
calendar day?
we'll get that arranged and let them know you're coming and let the journal and their staff and Tyler Smith know. Be a part of that.
Conference, yeah.
I,
Yeah, just need to ask Jared. Look like all were in except for Jared.
that's
And
on the
Clint's-
2nd.
Clint
Clint.
and-
No, there's 2 out. No, I'm assuming Jared. He just
Your city
he works.
I actually have a very full day that week.
Okay, this question we had is in our agenda meetings. Do you prefer live reports or staff reports or depend on the topic?
What's your,
Are you
Live
talking?
reports,
We
like
give you staff reports.
or staff report?
Do you want them live? Do you prefer them written? How do you want them? If it, or does it depend on
You
what the
talking
content
for
is?
Yes.
here,
For this
that.
meeting.
for this meeting?
Yep.
I actually prefer both.
well, so it's depending on the
Yeah.
topic.
So that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a general, this is what's going on in our department, there's no big issue.
I'm okay
You want
with
it
just,
written, but then if they're having a
Yes.
significant change, you'd rather have them speak
Yes.
on it.
Yes.
or-
yes.
Plus, I mean, it's nice to get to know them too. So there's, I mean, in addition to what they're saying, it's nice to be able to interact with them as well, but.
I just think anytime, obviously, we have a topic of change, having that ahead of time as part of our package to be able to review allows us to be prepared to potentially ask some of those follow-up questions in here. So that's where that written report comes in very handy for me personally.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate being able to ask questions when I don't understand.
Okay, I met with you twice now in the last month on make an agreement with the Walker purchase the property, and they're agreeable, it's moving forward, looking to set a closing date. I just need that final nod to keep moving that forward. It'll be part of the budget amendment April 11th, because, you know, you've been in the budget showing the money's coming out of this bucket, going in that bucket to be spent. So if I see that, we'll keep on moving that ahead. Thank you, appreciate the support on that, staff.
I know it's from this direction.
Very, very happy with you on that. This is solid waste. So yesterday, Councilman Warren came in with Pam Roberts, came from Wasatch Front Waste and Recycle, and through the emails, the meeting grew, and Justin was here because he's now been assigned to sanitation, but there were some pleasant surprises in that. Russ Wall actually ended up doing it, and in fact, he goes to work for the
Herhoff.
At the first, maybe April 2nd, and so he did a presentation, he was not able to make it. So you can tell he was not, Stevie's been back there, he actually seen it work, so he definitely agrees, but, Senator Bradley came in this year.
He's also seen it.
Yeah, yes, he has, he said I was the naysayer, and he was very supportive. He's also very familiar with the Texas one that actually failed, and why it failed. And that one was actually helps funded by the state of Texas and some federal government funds. And here, Herhoff is actually asking for no monies to set up and get an operation. And I think there was people here to beat it down, but there's also enough in the room to support it. So how we got out of that is, yes, some people are planning to go there to view the facility and get their questions answered firsthand, because our recycle is different than theirs in Europe because of the, you know, they're very conscientious, and they're actually quite more green than we are in the United States. The United States is a big waster, but they still, part of the issue was, correct me, Sherry, if I'm misquoting some of the statements, but we got it in their business model plan. Well, who's they supplying the recycled material to? I'm thinking, I'm not so caught up in that. Why do we worry about that? They're coming willing to invest their dollars to build the plant. All they asking for are trash.
That we're paying to get rid of anyways.
Typically, we pay now with the CPI jump every year. What if that does? If there is nothing, that sounds reasonable for some of their fuel costs. But where we're at staying right now is to try to give them direction and looking at who really should go. And definitely I say Sherry because she's on that board. And then looking direction after that.
I would like to attend that, but I think that's partly because Nicole is already gone, if I remember correctly.
Part of my thought in this, there need to be more members from Wasatch Front Waste go. And so, how many do they want to take back and do that? We'd like Solid County Health Department, they were here. I'd like them to go and get educated up on it, but they have some county process that they may not be able to go. But I don't want to abuse the situation, be respectful, but definitely get the people that can help business loans. I think it's a great idea. Instead of buying more land for landfills, to actually slow down. We have 15 years left. Mark actually reported that to us yesterday on that. 15 this landfill at current needs, and they're already looking at buying property for the next landfills. That's a poor plan. So if you actually put this in place and you have two or even all of them double at 4% waste has to go back and be buried, that would extend that life cycle 45 to 60 years.
And if you'll reiterate, there's no cost to the city.
Yeah.
No cost to the city on these particular fact-finding trips.
Right, no cost to the city. And I'll tell you, when I think about this, because there was a lot of pushback from some of the people in the room yesterday, and great questions, but I look at this as a business that wants to come and set up shop here in our state.
Yeah.
Is asking no money. They're gonna come and put in all the infrastructure themselves.
The only requirement they have is we have to contract with them for our garbage. However, they're gonna lock in our rates to our tipping fees now, so it's not like we're gonna contract them and then they're gonna jack our rates way up. If they fail, the worst thing that can happen is we go right back to the landfill that we're already filling. I know Senator Bramble said that in Utah County, they're looking to expand down there $100 million to expand that. And we're talking a significant amount of taxpayer money that has to go into these facilities. And why would we not explore something that can alleviate some of those taxpayer dollars? Maybe we could put $100 million towards something like roads, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, there's definitely better ways to spend it when there's technology that's proven and working, that's willing to come here, and this company, much different than many others, is not asking for us to give them money. So it's like capitalism, right? We're encouraging a business to come here and set up shop, and we're gonna give them our garbage, I just as soon sell it to them versus
Well, and it
pay for
truly,
it.
it's not garbage anymore, it's recyclables. Everything there, except for a very, very small percentage, gets recycled.
Right.
And so either through fuel use or through, glass or metals or plastics, but they all get recycled. So for me, I don't see why as a state and as a county and as a community, we would not want to be doing anything we can to make something like this happen.
Yeah.
There's so many pluses about it. When I was talking to Pam about it, and she sat right there, here next to me. You think about, we have a green recycle that our residents pay what they want, and they have a recycled blue can that they pay more for, and they got their black can. Well, they just want you to throw it all in one can. So you stop specializing trucks to pick up the different things, you just cut your operation cost. So I see this as, I'm gonna be skeptical a little bit. If it's really true, it's great. They've been running over there for 20 years. They have 6 plants. One plant runs at 450,000 tons and run through a year. You know what that is? All of Salt Lake Valley. That's amazing. That's one plant.
Well, and I'll tell you, my biggest concern is it true? If it really is what they say they are.
He was very.
Bramble says it
well,
is.
He was like, something back many times. He says, I was a big naysayer, I asked a lot of questions, and he saw the staple, is that? Stapler.
The fuel.
Yeah, whatever that German word is for burn refuse, they burn pellets, so. He said that, here again, we have not seen it. It's new to the United States, and everyone said, why Utah? And he asked that same question, and the question they answered is this: Utah is a labor-free state, meaning we don't have unions, and that drives and mothballs everything up in the United States, and they're looking at Utah to do that because Utah has a lot of land. We can landfill things indefinitely almost, right? Grand Canyon needs to be filled in, right? No, just kidding. But the point being is, that's a poor plan. We should be on board with what they're doing, and they like the grass. They want the wet stuff. It creates that methane gas that actually they use their own plant for operation.
Yeah. And another point that I think is super valid that was being made, and I think that the state really has to take a look at this, is when they place these landfills, in the places they place these landfills, they're a long ways away from anything. They're not a long ways away from anything anymore, and they're going to continue to be closer and closer and closer. And this offers a solution. These plants, I think they said most of these plants have a 6-acre stamp.
Yeah.
That's tiny.
Footprint, yeah.
So it's like.
Well, they're going back and supposedly mining these old.
They're reclaiming.
They're reclaiming the
Right.
land. They're reclaiming these.
Russ, by the way, has been hired to. Twill's committed. They're moving forward.
Yeah,
Theirs.
Twill's going.
So his design saying to do a double door where the truck pulls in, that door, main door closes, the next door opens up, and that's where the truck pulls in and dumps. So outside smell there is none. And so they said this a 6-acre footprint, the residents aren't going to smell a thing.
Well, you said that too, how you're like, you just don't smell it.
You went there, you didn't
I mean, the
smell it.
door, when the door's open and I was peeking in at the trash, well then of course you can smell it, but yeah.
But after it goes in the dry box,
But a few
then after
paces
that,
away,
But
not
that's what they
smell.
said, even in the close around, facilities just don't smell it. So I just think that I think it would be silly for us not to really
continue to pursue
Continue to
this,
pursue, I agree.
So we'll, vet out, visit each one and see really how far, how much, market is gonna go. Didn't want to never communicate it out, so, you never know who may need to go, but, I'll get right on it. And thanks for sharing, for being there, and also, hearing it. I mean, I'm glad Senator Bramwell came in, it was very
Yeah, us
impressive.
too.
He had very good knowledge about it.
Definitely would like to move forward. And the nice thing about his position, where he's at, is he has some pull there. He's gonna be able to help these things move along, which is really advantageous for us.
Everybody knows him on the Hill, that's for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, he was, I didn't hear this to myself, but he was complimentary of your city hall, and he said Provost jealous.
Yeah, that's what he told me, Provost jealous of this building.
It's a very nice looking building and facility right here, so I walked in there. The last thing I have, Council Mayor, is the mayor is hosting COM here tomorrow, Conference of Mayors meeting tomorrow. And you can all pretend we haven't noticed you to be there, but if you want to come, if you're invited, always when we're hosting, our staff, when you host it, you give a short 10, 15-minute blip about what's great about your city. And so, your team that
We
you
have to
have,
squeeze it into 10 minutes.
it's hard. So,
And what time is that tomorrow?
12 o'clock.
Yeah, 11:30 is when they start to get there.
Mayor Showbrook, 12 o'clock.
That's true. Unofficial.
So with that said, try and give us a heads up, and we'll make sure that, if you're real attendant, sound like things sound, who's got interest already. But your staff that we have is, here again, just keep raising the bar on how we communicate and what we're able to produce. So they were tasked real quick to put something very short together, but very powerful. And Tammy and her team set up home run again. So I just wanted to show it off a little bit, because if you don't, not there tomorrow, you won't see it.
Yeah, it'd be great.
So go ahead, Alan, if you click it. Nice work, but we have to give our pilots some credit there, our drone flyers.
Bill and Eric.
Yeah, so.
And we also have a gentleman, Matt, who does some contract work for us that did some of those other shots. Very nice.
So where's the sign up for wearing the Yeti suit?
Yeah.
There's a list.
Mayor's been like,
Girl Yeti's
Mayor,
coming.
Mayor, Mayor,
Oh,
Mayor.
girl
Yeah.
Yeti's coming?
There's
Well, I
gonna be
would
a
hope so.
romance breaking
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Going to have to
Oh,
get
wow.
married. Oh, I wanna wear the girl Yeti.
I shouldn't say that.
We're gonna put-
Well, we
Is it air
hope that
conditioned? We
that
want
the
it.
relationship.
Hallmark, it's,
And have
they're,
them send it to Travis.
so think about this, they're gonna date
Yeti Matt's
for
coming?
years to come, to have a family, it's all good.
This is a great place to raise a family, even a Yeti family.
Even a Yeti can have a family.
That's very, John, very, very good work.
Yes, thank you.
He's
But
so awesome.
just like, not just this farm, we have phenomenal apartments. That park looks the way it is, City Hall's being maintained the way you have great staff, and I'm very proud of what we have.
We have a wonderful city.
By the way, that's a wrap.
Okay, thank you
If
very
you have
much.
questions of me?
Before we accept the motion to adjourn this meeting, if we go back to 2.3, planning commission, appointments. I know we wanted to have, I know there's some discussion of,
Has anybody heard from Jared?
I mean, I'm happy.
Okay,
Thanks for
I
getting
have
the
adjourned, you're too late.
So-
I'll try to make it for my meeting with Dan.
We can, I'm,
We move forward.
that's the direction I was looking for, thank you very much. Okay, all right, with that, I will, accept the motion.
Motion to adjourn the city council work meeting.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned, thank you very much.
Thanks for getting the